So our next topic is going to be how to identify financing and customers. Anybody here looking for money for their business? Yeah? So there are a lot of you who didn't raise your hands who don't need money to start your business, right? Okay, so here's the deal with identifying that money. And by the way, for those of you looking to go to the bank to seek financing for your business, I could tell you that they're going to charge you a lot of money in interest. So anybody heard of an SBA loan, small business loan? So what happens is, I'll give you the insight on that. If you go to a bank and you try to apply for a loan and they turn you down, you can actually ask the SBA to back your loan, and then you go to the same bank. You can go to the same bank or other banks, and with the support of the SBA backing, you may qualify for the very same loan that you get turned down for. Now, the thing that you're not told, I've asked this question and they kind of beat around the bush to answer this, but SBA taps on top of whatever your loan percent payback is, another percent or so. So if you're getting a loan at 3% or 4%, you're actually, another 1% of it is going to go to SBA. So just be aware of that. And let me just share with you, in the loans that you're going to apply for, there's more than one type of loan. If you don't qualify for a business loan, there's with home equity loans. There's other types of loans. There's lines of credit. There's a whole bunch. There's probably dozens upon dozens of ways to get money. And the other way of using money for your business is not looking for money in itself, but looking for people to give you things that you need to start your business without having to pay for them. So you work on barter. If you've ever been to a department store, you know, you go through Macy's, you go through Bloomingdale's or Saks Fifth Avenue, there's tons and tons of inventory in those stores. I can guarantee you most of that inventory, like at least half of it, is not even paid for yet. What they do is they give them up until a certain time frame to pay on all that stuff. That's why when a certain time frame comes up, you'll see these enormous sales trying to clear out their inventory because their bills are coming due. And so that's another way of raising money or capital by saving money or offsetting what you need to owe. So, and then as far as identifying customers, who are the people who want your product? Who will most benefit? You have to know your psychographics, your demographics, and your technographics. What that basically means is, what's the age group? Certainly if you have an age group that you're catering towards, which is into AARP or modern maturity, they're not going to be into buying for themselves skateboards or soccer outfits, maybe for the grandkids. So you have to identify that. If you're selling stuff for handicapped people with wheelchairs, you're not going to be marketing to athletes. So you need to be quite aware of who your customers are. And where can you find those? By the way, I'll give you a little inside tip, that if you need information for both your business plan and for you to become more competitive with what you're trying to sell and promote, I assume that most of you are going to be either in service industry or product sales, like a retail shop possibly, or manufacturer in some way, but not as many. What you could do is reach out to different publications, and they have something free that if you were to pay for yourself would cost you probably tens of thousands of dollars. And that is information in its white papers or its sales kits. So if I were to contact the New York Times, well, let's say my customer was typically a tennis player. They love to play tennis. So these are people, maybe they drive around BMWs, and I was selling BMWs. I can get a report from Tennis Magazine telling me all the psychographics of their audience. What's their lifestyle like? How much money? Where do they live? All that stuff is out there and free and available. All you need to do is ask those publications for a copy of their sales kit with that information in it. So having said that, I know Jordan has a lot of success in getting money. People just dropping $1 million checks in your lap. So why don't you tell us more about how they can also get money and how to find their customers?
Sure. So I think if you are looking for money, you have to not be afraid to go out there and ask for it. You can go to a local business, you can go to a bank. Just do a Google search for people that invest, especially living in and around New York. There's New York City Angel, which is a group of angel investors. Do you guys all know what angel investors, what the term is? So an angel is basically a private, high net worth individual who makes it a habit of investing in companies, usually anywhere between $10,000 and $100,000. And if you look around for angel meetups, especially in Manhattan, or there's a group called NYC Angel, there's a group called NYC Seed. This is basically a group of high net worth individuals that regularly invest in companies who have come together as a group, and in some cases will listen to pitches from individual people saying, hey, I want you to invest in my particular business. The great thing about the proximity to New York is there are a lot of people that work in industries where they're very highly compensated. There's a lot of investment bankers, there's a lot of hedge fund people where they make a whole lot of money. The way I first started raising money was I basically read a report in the news that said the average salary at Goldman Sachs, the average bonus in the year that I read this, was $500,000. And that was the average bonus, never mind their salary. And that included every Goldman Sachs employee, including secretarial. So that was actually a skewed average. It's actually much, much higher. And when I first came up with my business, I said, you know what, if I can get 5 or 10 of these people to give me $100,000. These are people who have been making a bonus alone of $500,000 every year, some of them for 10, 20, 30 years. $100,000 to them is not much money. Even though this could be this unimaginable amount to you, and in terms of getting your business off the ground, could be really huge. To someone who's in a field where they make that much money, it's not that much. So my original goal was I said, you know what, I'm going to find a couple people who make quite a bit of money and convince them that this is a good investment, that I'm going to give them a return over time, that if they give me $100,000 or $1 million today, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, I'm going to give them a 10 times return. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind. When you're raising money, typically, someone is going to ask you, how am I going to make this money back? And a lot of angel investors, or even institutional investors, between 2 and 5 years out, they want to know that they're going to get some sort of return on their money. And a lot of people are going to want between a 5 and 10 times return. So if someone gives you $100,000 today, you want to be able to say, in 5 years, I'll be able to make you $500,000 or $1 million. And if you can't say that, then you might not want to raise money. You might want to see if you can start the business yourself, basically bootstrap it, do it under your own means. And in terms of how you're going to make that much money for them, that's where the whole narrative comes in. You give me $100,000 today, I'm going to open my own store. In year 2, I'm going to open 2 stores. By year 4, I'm going to have 5 stores. By year 5, I'm going to have 10 stores. And collectively, they're going to be bringing in this much money, and that's how I'm going to give you a return on your original investment. So it basically comes back to that story again. What's the story of your idea from today to 5 years from now? And 5 years from now, how big can your idea get? Is it scalable? Is it the sort of thing where there's a direct path? If I'm successful today, then it gets bigger by next year, and it gets bigger the year following, and it gets bigger the year after that. Because that's something an investor is going to want to know. Not just what's your business going to look like a year after I write you the check, but what's your business going to look like 5 years after I write you the check?
Great. Quick distinction is you mentioned angel investors. If you could share with the audience here the difference between an angel investor and venture capitalist.
Sure. So venture capitalists are basically someone who has raised a fund. And the angel investors, these are my own dollars. I've made a lot of money, and now I, as a practice, invest in other businesses and identify myself as someone who invests in other businesses. Venture capitalists are people who represent a fund. So they will typically raise money from high net worth individuals who, on their own, do not make it a practice to invest. So like an angel investor will say, you know what, I have a lot of money. I also trust my own instincts that I'm going to be able to identify companies to invest in, and I'm going to write checks. Venture capitalists will find high net worth individuals that may not have the inclination or the time to identify places to invest their money. So they'll go to a VC with a track record and say, hey, I want to give you my money, you invest it for me, and you give me a return over time. So a venture capitalist may create a fund of anywhere between $1 million to $1 billion. And their job is to invest other people's money. So it's a different kind of relationship. An angel investor, you're taking money from their personal bank account, and they're going to want to know over time how you're spending their money. A venture capitalist has more diversified portfolio. Typically, a venture capitalist will invest in 10 different companies, and they expect 8 of the 10 of them to fail. But the 2 of them that don't fail will do so incredibly well that it will make them more money than they invested across all 10. So venture capitalists basically are professionals who are really good at identifying opportunities. And even then they recognize we're some of the best people out there. Even then 8 out of 10 of my investments are not gonna work out, because that's the reality of entrepreneurship. Your business may work out, it may not. There's a lot of things that you have to take into account. Sometimes the timing's wrong. There's a whole bunch of factors. But yeah, a venture capitalist is a little bit more of a process as well. An angel investor, you're basically appealing to them as a person, and anywhere from a single meeting to a year to get them to write a check. A venture capitalist will typically have a process. They'll say, okay, you come in for a first meeting. We will have a series of meetings over between 2 and 4 months where we're more and more interested. We have more and more people from our firm sitting in and listening to your idea. And if your idea passes every single check, at the end of X months, we will write you a check, and here's what happens next. So it's a little bit more of a structured process, and it's a little bit less arduous on you because you're going to have to personally find an angel investor. VC is, you can do a Google search for New York City venture capitalists and find a whole laundry list of them.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, Alan, if you could share with us how to identify financing and customers.
Well, truly, necessity is the mother of invention, and in this environment, it's become so difficult to get business loans that there are a number of creative alternatives that are available that could be a good resource for starting your business. There are companies that specialize in retirement fund financing where you're able to actually tap into your 401k or IRA money before 59 and a half without incurring penalty, without it being viewed as a taxable event. And these specialty finance companies help guide you in terms of making those funds available. Typically, it's a process which requires you to set up your new company as a C corporation, create a retirement fund for that C corporation, roll over dollars that may currently exist in your Schwab or Fidelity account and put them into the retirement fund of your new company, and then you can borrow money down from that pool of funds. So it's a creative way of getting at money that you may have available to you at a later point in life but want to use for a business today. Of course, these can be viewed as high-risk types of exercises to get money, and you'd naturally want to have the blessings of your accountant. But a lot of people will supplement funds that they have available to them from friends, family, and use retirement dollars to get their new business started.